Well, let's see. Try to get going tonight a little early just to make sure we don't have any problems right at the top of the hour. And so far, everything looks pretty doggone good. I don't have COVID 19, by the way. I have springtime allergies. So if I sniffle a little bit tonight, I'm probably not going to end up on a ventilator tomorrow. At least I hope not, because I'm supposed to go ride tomorrow. Hey, Mike, how's it going? Good to see you. Whoa, that was loud. So tomorrow, for those of you who are out here a little early with me tonight, I'm going to go up to Salmon, I think, tomorrow. There's a little bit of a chance it's going to rain, but I think it's going to be okay. And I'm going to try to ride one of the new day six trails. Brian DeLinge and Mike Evans were up there a few weeks ago and did some marking on it. And I think it's probably pretty good to go. So I'm going to go up tomorrow. Brian can't go. I don't know if Mike's going to go with me or not, but I'm heading up there tomorrow and I'm going to check this trail out. And there's been a little bit of a snafu with the Forest Service with this trail. I think in the fullness of time, it'll all work itself out. But I want to go up and see what's been done on it since I visited it last fall. And since Brian's not going, I think the odds are pretty good that I won't get struck by lightning. I won't get chased by a bear. Uh, it might be a pretty unadventurous ride. I don't know. Mike Evans, how you doing, man? You going tomorrow? Hey, James, Ralph, how you doing? David, what up? Hopefully tonight we have conquered all the technical issues here and we get through this thing. I did fix it so that if for some reason tonight there's a buffering issue or something goes wrong, we lose the stream, the thing's just going to record all the way through. And about 5 minutes after I end the live broadcast, it'll all upload automatically. So even if there's a buffering issue tonight, if something happens, the whole video will be complete and you can watch it later on if something happens to the live stream. All you got, hey Mike, all you got to do is be waiting at the Phillips 66 station tomorrow morning when I show up. What time you want me to be there? I can be there at 7, I can be there at 8, I can be there at 9. There's no particular hurry, so you tell me what time you want me to stop and I'll come and get you. I kind of have to go tomorrow because I don't know when I'm going to get another day. So, uh, because of all the turmoil around here with Megan and her job and stuff, I know for a fact I have tomorrow off. Kids are all taken care of. Everything's good to go. So I'm kind of locked in. So I got to go tomorrow. 7. All right. I'll see you at the place at 7. I'll get up at 6 and get out of here. My bike and stuff's all loaded up, so I'm good to go. All right. Well, I'm showing that it is coming right up on the top of the hour. So let's go ahead and get started. Last week, we talked about day 3, and we gotten all the way up to, I think, exiting Ketchum and where you leave the Warm Springs Road. And the first trail that you encounter off of Warm Springs Road is something called Warfield Creek. And I'm going to bring up the map here so I'm looking at it right now because it'll jog my memory. Warfield Creek is the place where there's the water crossing that you got to pay some attention to. Um, even pretty late in the season, the last time I was there, that water crossing can be very deep if you cross it in the wrong place. So right at 3D XYZ 65, there's a creek crossing. And it would behoove you. Also, the sign there's a little confusing. There have been some riders in the past that were a little worried that they were actually riding a closed trail because there's a sort of a confusing sign there that talks about motorized and non-motorized trails. But the trail that you're going to be on, where the waypoints are, excuse me, it's a perfectly good trail. So don't worry there. If the sign confuses you, just keep on going. As long as you're following the trail that the waypoints are on, you're just fine. But that creek crossing is a little bit delicate. And the first time I did it, I actually had to get off the motorcycle and walk up and down the creek bank a little bit. And if you walk up and down the creek bank, and I can't tell you whether to go east or west or left or right because I think it changes a little bit. It kind of depends on what happens over the winter. But if you go in the first place you'd be tempted to go, kind of where the single track trail comes down off the road and goes to the creek, that's probably the wrong place. And what I've had to do is, I think, go back to the east most of the time, and it's not very far. It's 50, maybe 100 feet, but you'll see a really nice place on the other side where the trail goes out, and it's pretty shallow all the way across there. If you cross in other places, what happens is the farther across the creek you get, the deeper it is, and it's more than airbox deep in a lot of those spots, especially early in the season. So you're going to want to watch that. So you get off the road there, and you're going to head up Warfield Creek to something called Red Warrior Trail, and it's beautiful back up in there. The Ketchum crowd really does an exceptional job, both the motorized users and the Mike Evans upstream. I'm saying it's downstream. I think you have to go downstream a little bit. I'm not sure. Again, it varies, I think, a little bit from year to year because I've been there a couple of times and it seems to me like I came out in a different place or I crossed in a slightly different spot both times. But if you walk up and down the bank, you'll see the place that I'm talking about. There's an obvious spot to exit the stream. What's not so obvious is where the trail comes down off the road. That seems to be different the last couple of times I've been there. All I know is just walk up and down the stream a little bit. You'll see an obvious spot. But just don't go charging straight into it because that would be a hydro lock, I think, almost for sure. So you're going to ride up something called Warfield Creek, beautiful trail. And all of the trails in that area are exquisitely taken care of by not only the moto crowd, but the mountain bikers buff these things to immaculateness. The equestrians are out there taking care of these trails. These are mixed-use trails. They're true mixed-use trails. You're going to probably see some other people when you're there, but the trails are fantastic. The views are good. The trails are well maintained. They're usually well sawed, especially the time most of you are going to be there. If you went there right now, you'd have some troubles, but in most years, by the time the Tour of Idaho crowd arrives, this stuff is sawed and it's usually brushed and it's usually in pretty nice shape. Not all of it, because some of the trails we ride, not everybody rides, but most of it's in pretty good shape. So you're going to ride up Warfield Creek, the Red Warrior, and then it wanders around the high country up there. There's a very iconic cliff view, and there's a challenge point up there where that cliff view is. Then you're going to start heading back downhill, and the routes diverge at, let's see, what is it? 4D XYZ 69. So there's a solo route, there's the 2 and 3 person route, and the challenge section if you decide that you want to do that. If you are on a 3-person team, I might just ride, this might be one of the challenge sections I would just do. And the reason is 3-person teams are going to have to do the hard part of it anyway. Where you drop down into Big Peak Creek, that's kind of one of the hardest parts of that trail. There are some parts up high that I think are technically challenging too, but the part down low where you get into the creek is what most people consider the gnarly part. So that's something for you. You know, 3-person teams need 3 challenge sections. On day 3, you might as well do that challenge section since you're going to have to do the hardest part of it anyway. The only thing about that is I think the regular trail is much prettier, so you'd miss some good views and stuff. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but it's a challenge section worthy of consideration if you're a 3-person team. I put a new solo route on this year at 3D XYZ 69 just because it's a little quicker than the way that the 2 and 3 team route goes. But either way, you're going to end up at something called Dollar Hide Summit. And at Dollarhide Summit, you have a little bit of a problem there. The waypoint, let me see if I can find it. I think it's 3D XYZ 71. I'm looking at it right now. That waypoint is exactly where it needs to be. And that waypoint is right in the middle of a steep little uphill climb. The first time I went up there was a log laying across the trail. And it was kind of weird. It was a diagonal log laying across the trail in a pretty steep little section. So I did what all of us would do. I ramped up a little bit, lofted the front wheel, and hopped over the log and kept on going. And in about another half a mile, that trail just ends in this nightmare of blowdown, and it's been burned through. It's just nasty as heck. You can see the road where you need to go, and it's only like 100 yards, but it's a pretty steep 100 yards down to the road. So I rode back looking for the trail, and I rode like miles back. I just said, I've missed it somehow. And I kept coming back, and I kept wheeling over that log. And then finally, I just pushed my bike down through the deadfall to the road. When I got to the road, I saw where the trail came out, so I rode back up the trail. That log that I've been wheeling across, if you stood back and looked at it from the right angle, it was a big arrow that somebody had made out of logs that they put in the ground to tell you that's where you need to turn. And I dropped a waypoint right exactly where you need to go there. And the waypoint is 3D XYZ 71. Mike Boughton, one of the Ketchum guys, just chimed in and said he thinks that the three-person team should do the challenge section anyway. And Mike and Jeff Jensen and all those guys have told me they agree with that. I thought it was a little hard up at the divide too. There's a little bit more technicality up there, but absolutely the gnarliest part is when you get down in that creek. There's no doubt about that. So once you get down off Dollarhide Summit, again, 3DXYZ 71, if you have to, stop when your GPS says you're rolling over that and look for the trail that goes down. It's once you see it, it's easy. It's kind of an obvious trail. It's just that it's in the middle of a little steep uphill section, and most people are trying to carry their speed to get up that. You're going to go down to Dollarhide Summit. You ride down the road a ways, and then you're going to hit a trail. I think it's Big Peak Creek 16 Trail. Beautiful trail. It's got a little bit of side hilling, but nothing serious, and it's just this really beautiful, nice, well-maintained trail that's going to take you back into the highlands above Big Peak Creek. It's a beautiful trail. It stays up high most of the way. It's one of my favorite trails in that area. And about halfway across that trail, if you're on a three-person team, you've got to jump down into Big Peak Creek. By the way, even getting down to Big Peak Creek, I haven't been up there in a couple of years, but the last time, even the descent down into Big Peak Creek is not a lot of fun. It's really steep at the top. And then where it starts getting less steep, it's really rocky for a long way. It's rocky. It's got a little bit of side hilling. It's not like cliffy side hilling, but there's a bunch of rocks and stuff that you'd tumble into if you blew it in a couple places. If you are a member of a two-person team or a solo team, once you get past that intersection, you pretty much have got it made. It's pretty easy down Lick Creek into Kalen's store, Smoky Bar store. For those of you who are on a three-person team and you've got to go down into Big Peak Creek, you've got a little ways to go. You're not exactly there yet. If you're on the normal route, probably from where those, let's see, 3DXYC 78, you're probably 45 minutes from Kalen's store at the most if you're on the nominal route or the normal route, pardon me. If you've got to take that three-person route, you might be 90 minutes, depending on how much trouble you have. Once on the three-person route, there's a bunch of times you're in the stream, and there's a bunch of times once you get into Smoky Creek, Big Smoky Creek, excuse me, you've got to cross that stream maybe 5-6 times. And even in October, some of those creek crossings are wetter than you need them to be. I've drowned a bike in that creek before in the middle of October. So, and that was in not an extraordinarily high runoff year. So there's some risk at some of those creek crossings. They're a little slick and they're way wider, some of them, than you think they ought to be or you wish they were. So at the end of day 3, you get the Smoky Bar store. Kalen Dennis is up. I said last week in kind of my closing comments, Smoky Bar store and Kalen and Jenny and her whole crew that hang out there are one of the reasons why we do the tour of Idaho. I made a living teaching physics at Idaho State University for 25 years. And so the taxpayers of the state of Idaho paid my salary. Their children took my classes, and that's why I had a job. One of the things that I always wanted to do with the tour of Idaho was to find a way to give something back to the state that had done so much to me. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was encourage people to visit places like Smoky Bar Store. So you go to these beautiful little places that you're going to go to in the middle of Idaho, and Smoky Bar Store is the first place that's really way off of the grid. Those people is cool. So you're going to be sitting there kicking back, and you're off the grid, and you're sitting there, and your cell phones don't work, and there's nothing going on, but you got ice cold beer, and there's probably hamburgers and stuff going on. So you're kind of sitting there kicking back, going, "Man, this is great. I sure do wish I could be in a place like this. I would love to live here instead of downtown bumfuck wherever I'm from." Well, those people like living there too, but here's the deal: you can't eat the scenery. They have to have a way to make a living. So all these little places you're going to go through: Smoky Bar Store, Smiley Creek, Chalice, Salmon, North Fork, Elk City, Lowell, all these places, those people need something in order to sustain themselves. They can't just go out and eat pine needles and drink water out of the stream. They got to have some money. So one of the things I wanted to do with the tour was to send as many people as I could to those places. That's also the reason why I finally relented a couple of years ago and let everybody talk me into sort of making T2 kind of an official thing, sort of the unofficial version of the Tour of Idaho. I didn't really want to do that, but people convinced me that, look, if your goal is really to aid commerce, those T2 people spend money too. And the people that pressed that argument on me were absolutely correct. That's a good argument. And so that's why I said, let's just go ahead and make it official. So when you're there, make sure that you appreciate the fact that those places exist not because it was preordained at the moment right after the Big Bang. Smoky Bar Store didn't condense out of ether. It wasn't the next thing after hydrogen, helium, protons, and electrons. Smoky Bar Store exists because Kaylin and her family have worked their butts off for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years. I know that it's been part of her family for a long time. And you have to go there and spend money in order for that to perpetuate itself down the road. All these little places along the way are like that. That's another reason why the rules are the way they are. I want you doing business. I want you to spend money at Kaylin's store. I don't want you shipping your stuff to Kaylin's store where she doesn't get any of the money. That's why that's against the rules. No, you got to buy something that she has for you to sell. You know what? If it's not exactly what you want, so what? I get people that start, I read this on other, websites and all this other stuff where all these guys that claim they did the tour in 3 days and it was easy. One of the things they gripe about is, I changed my oil 6 times and I couldn't get the exact weight of Motorex that I want in any of these little hillbilly places along the way. Oh my God. First of all, I've never changed my oil on the tour of Idaho anywhere. Don't change my filters either. I use filter skins, and I'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Your bike, the least of your worries is going to be changing your oil in your motorcycle. If you get to the end of it and the wheels are still round and the frame's intact, that's kind of a miracle. But worrying about changing oil and stuff like that, and especially getting the exact special blend of motor oil that you blend together yourself in your shop out of the 5 most expensive quarts of motor oil that you can find at your local power sports dealer, that ain't happening in the middle of Idaho. Kaylin and all these places have some of that kind of stuff for you in case of an emergency or in case that's just what you want to do. But, live a little. Try new food. Try new motor oil. Have some fun. Have an adventure out of it. So you're going to spend the night with Kaylin, and you're going to get up the next day. You're going to start on day 4. And day 4 is a continuation of day 3 as far as I'm concerned, that the trails are fairly similar, and you're starting to get into more really high points. The first 10,000 foot point was at the top of Stewart Canyon and Corral Creek on day 3. The next 10,000 foot and the highest point in the tour, 10,444, you're going to encounter on day 4 at a place called Railroad Ridge. Same kind of deal, spectacular views, mostly really good trails that you're going to like, and you can make some good time going down. You're going to have a blast. So on day 4, let me pull up just what the single track trails are, because here I think for the first time you start getting into some things that have ratings other than PG. So I've got Paradise Creek 2 Snow Slide, which is one of the funnest trails anywhere. It's got a little gnarl approaching slow snow slide up at the top, but most of that trail is fourth gear single track. You can just rip it through the woods. A couple little side hills, but nothing to worry about. Paradise Creek, however, after snow slide, has got the first big exposure side hill that you're going to run into on the tour. And it's scarier looking than it actually is really hazardous. But we lost a rider there about, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago. There was a guy whose beacon was pinging, but it just quit moving. And it was kind of late at night. And there were some fellas coming up the next day, and they found him the next day, and he'd fallen off one of the upper switchbacks and rolled all the way down to the lower switchback. And he was kind of okay, but his bike was kind of trashed. And somehow or the other, they got him out of there. They were able to get his bike serviceable enough that he could ride out, but he rode to Smiley Creek and retired from there. So there's a precedent for somebody taking a big tumble off of that first side hill there. And it's the first really big exposure side hill of the tour, something that'll be a theme for coming days. So down Paradise Creek to the West Fork of Big Smoky, nice trail. It's a little bit difficult to find the exit off that trail where you go up Mule Creek. There's a waypoint sitting right there, though. So when you come up on that waypoint, let me see if I can tell you which one it is. It is... It's so much nicer not to have this weird 30-second delay that I was dealing with last week. This is styling here. The waypoint that you are looking for is 40XYZ9. That is right at the exit off of West Fork of Big Smoky and up Mule Creek. Now, this